Hello. I hope you like my song. I wrote it, kind of. Actually, I gave it the free AI program called Suno. Wait. The bots are after me. I gave the free AI program Suno the following prompt: write a folk rock ballad about the Unitarian faith. That's it. I pushed a button, and in 15 seconds, I got 2 versions of that song, same lyrics, different voices, different instruments. I think the song's pretty good. Oops, my computer's. Yeah, I like the vibe. Some kind of bad rhymes there, and it's a bit generic, but it seems to me that it nailed Unitarian doctrine. In fact, it seemed better than some things you find in the Unitarian hymnal. And all right, I got to convince this, my little notes here to stay on. How am I going to do that? I am going to, well, we're just going to hope. Because could be a long time here if I keep doing this. All right, we're going to do it. Okay, so, yes, there we are. Okay, so isn't it strange that no human wrote that thing? No voice, that's not a human voice that sang it. But here we are, right? So I realized that something of a revolution was upon us when ChatGBT arrived at the end of 2022. I got an account. I gave ChatGBT a copy of a take-home final I had just given, and in seconds it answered the questions. And again, it was kind of generic, but it wasn't wrong. It was, moreover, not copied from somewhere else. It was, in some sense, original, and I probably would have given it an A. For teachers like me, this technology has provoked an existential crisis. It suggests that skills that we thought to be uniquely human and which we have spent our lives cultivating in ourselves and trying to develop in our students are things that computers can now do. And moreover, they can do it like the song generator without breaking a sweat. So my title today, The Meaning of Life in the Age of AI. Now you can read it in 2 ways. First, it could be about how living in an AI-filled world might alter or destroy what makes our lives meaningful. Second, if you put life in quotation marks, it could be about whether we are seeing in AI the dawn of a new kind of life. My ultimate target is the first reading, but I'll start by saying a bit about the second. So for much of our lives, AI has been more part of science fiction than anything real. I grew up in the Star Wars era, so C-3PO and R2-D2 were my favorites, but every generation has their own droids. These creatures act and sometimes look a lot like us, and they give philosophers lots of fun material for thought experiments, but such things weren't found in the real world. Real artificial intelligence research dates back really to the 1940s, and it's been conspicuously less successful. The last 25 years of the 20th century, when I sort of first started paying attention to this, was filled with frustration, with computers and robots routinely failing to perform even the simplest tasks we humans can do, a robot moving a block so that it could go along a road, for instance. But things started to change in the 2000s as Silicon Valley figured out techniques for pattern recognition. So applications like Google Photos and Google Translate, Siri, autocorrect and autocomplete functions for our messaging apps and things like that. Still, 10 years ago, we seemed a long way from having an AI that was intelligent in the way we think we are. But what is intelligence? The classic test was proposed by Alan Turing in 1950. It suggests that if a computer program can trick you into thinking it's human, then it must be intelligent. The Turing test used a setup very much like contemporary texting. Suppose you start texting with a couple of friends and I tell you that one of the friends is not in fact a human but an AI. Can you tell the difference? If you can't reliably guess which is human and which is the AI, then the AI has passed the test. There used to be annual contests where computers failed this test, but somewhere in the last 5 years or so, AI started passing it. Most of us are now painfully aware that a lot of the posts we see on social media are in fact posted by bots. though we have a hard time figuring out what is real. And when we begin having conversations with recent generative AIs like ChatGBT or Claude 3, they sound freakishly human. And I do mean sound. I mean, I could pull my phone out right now and we could have a conversation with ChatGBT, whose voice happens to sound a lot like Scarlett Johansson. And I'm sure she'd be pleased to meet all of you. The key to the AI revolution has been to build computers and programs that work more like our brains. You can think of the brain as a computer. A neuron is a bit like an adding machine. It totals up signals coming from other neurons that are attached to it. And when the sum reaches a certain threshold, the neuron fires, feeding into other computations in other neurons. These computations can be started by signals from sensory organs and can generate signals that go to various parts of the body that make us walk, talk, and otherwise act in the world. The big difference between brains and digital computers is that brain computation is both much slower and much more massively parallel. So a neuron can fire at most about a dozen times in a second, but human brains have nearly 100 billion of them. That's about 10 times as many neurons as in one brain as there are people on Earth, so a lot. On the other hand, something like your phone has a single CPU which can only perform one operation at a time, but it can do so really fast, perhaps 1 trillion operations in a second. But several things have changed in the last few decades. For one thing, our processors have gotten much faster. For another, computers increasingly use parallel architectures. So graphics processing units, or GPUs, which are the things which we invented to do video games, have lots of processors on a single chip and are parallel, though they don't have nearly as many as neurons in the brain. But these processors are now central as they're being developed in fast AI chips, which are the new thing here. But it's really the software more than the hardware that's changed. AI scientists have learned that the right way to program a computer to be intelligent is not really to program it at all. Instead, you just set up a big artificial neural network, add some learning algorithms, and just start feeding it data. The approach makes AI more like us than most people think. They don't know anything at birth, but you let them explore the world and they learn what to do and what to say. But of course, given the amount of information they have access to on the web and the speed at which these computers can operate, AIs can learn far more and faster than we can. So AI is starting to look intelligent, at least according to the Turing test, and it's doing so by learning in the same ways that we learn. But this doesn't mean that AIs are alive, that they're alive. Biologists think of living things as systems that exhibit various characteristics like metabolism, homeostasis, growth, and reproduction, and these distinguish them from non-living things. Life in this sense includes all of us, but it also includes things like fruit flies and fungi and bacteria. AIs probably shouldn't count as life in the biologist sense, though they do have processes that are analogous to biological processes. It's not for nothing that we speak of computer viruses. So perhaps we could think of AI as a kind of synthetic life. But whether AI is alive isn't the question that I think really matters. What matters is rather whether AIs are creatures we should care about. In the sense of being objects of moral concern. And yet the set of things we care about certainly doesn't match with the set of living things. Yeast and fungi may be alive, but I don't think we need to start thinking about their rights. I'm perfectly happy just to bake the bread. The better question to ask is whether AI could be a person. A person isn't the same thing as a human or an animal, though most or all humans are persons and maybe some other animals are as well. Philosophers have spent a lot of time worrying about what persons are, and I won't bore you with those details, but arguably persons have two really important characteristics that most living things do not have and which AIs might have or come to have. These are called sapience and sentience. So we're familiar with the word sapience. It comes from the Latin word, it's the Latin name from our species, Homo sapiens, and it comes from the Latin word for wisdom. To say that a creature is sapient is essentially to say that it's intelligent. We could think of this as passing the Turing test, but that's probably far too anthropocentric. It's probably better to think of sapience or intelligence as the ability to have goals, to plan, to perceive, to see threats and opportunities, to respond flexibly to an environment, especially to novel environments. It's pretty clear that generative AI programs are displaying some of these capacities we think of as intelligent or sapient. They are able, for instance, to respond to requests in spoken or written language that are novel and even surprising. Sometimes they can even be funny. The programs are not pre-programmed, and instead they arise, their responses arise out of dispositions that have been acquired through learning. Sentience, though, on the other hand, is the capacity to feel in the sense of having conscious experiences. Saying what a conscious experience is like is very tricky, but a nice way of putting it is that a creature has conscious experience if there's something that it's like to be that creature. There is, for instance, something that's like for us to feel hungry or in pain or fearful or angry or elated. While we experience sensations, sentience is more than just sensing. A smoke detector may sense or detect smoke, but there's nothing that it's like to be a smoke detector. It doesn't experience the smell of smoke in the way that we do. While sapience is a kind of ability which we can assess with things like the Turing test, we can't characterize sentience in terms of some behavior or ability at all. That's why we have such a hard time defining it, and it is unclear how we can know when something has it. We only infer that a creature has a sensation or has sentience by analogy to our own case. Take pain, for instance. I've felt it, so I know it exists for me. And I look at you and I assume that you have had pains as well. You are built largely like I am, and you have exhibited behavior similar to mine. So if you stub your toe and wince, I assume you just felt a pain, because I have felt a pain in similar circumstances. From a moral point of view, it's sentience rather than sapience that really matters. If a creature is not sentient, then it has no experience at all. It might be able to talk to us, to walk around, to solve lots of problems, and so on, but there would be nothing it is like for it to do those things. It would be essentially a zombie. If AIs are zombies, then no matter how intelligent they seem, we need not care about them, since there's nothing that is like to be them. The HBO series Westworld imagines such a place. Anybody see Westworld? Yeah, okay, so Westworld fans will know this gig. So Westworld was a theme park that was built for the super rich. It was populated by androids that looked and acted just like us, but which weren't sentient. Because they were zombies, customers could do anything they would like to them. They could talk with them, flirt with them, dance with them, but they could also rape them and torture them and shoot them and kill them and just not worry about it. Live out your sadistic fantasies guilt-free. Of course, the plot driver for the series, and there are lots of other sci-fi books and movies that do this kind of thing, is that maybe the androids really were sentient. They were acting like it hurt. At least they began to think so, and that's where we get robot revolutions, right? So, despite our prejudices, it's far from clear that the material composition of a creature should disqualify something like a Westworlder or even more primitive forms of AI from sentience. It may seem hard to imagine how some AI running on hardware composed of silicon chips could possibly have conscious experience. But if you think for a bit, you'll see that it's pretty bizarre to think that brains should have conscious experiences either. Why is it that a huge bundle of microscopic cells bound together by a web of electrochemical signaling gives rise to experience? Scientists really don't have an explanation. We're just hunks of meat. And why should it be any easier for a hunk of meat to have an experience than a hunk of metal? To date, we have operated on the assumptions that AI are labor-saving tools. But were AIs to be or become sentient, then these tools would become slaves. We need not think that AIs should be completely like us to worry about AI slavery. Think about the difference between how a farmer should treat his truck and how he should treat his dogs. Both the truck and the dogs could be useful for the farmer in doing his work, and for this reason, he would care for both of them. But the reason to care for the dog goes beyond their usefulness. Dogs are sentient and sapient creatures who can be more or less happy and who can suffer real harms. While the farmer shouldn't worry about leaving the truck locked up in the barn or selling it or junking it if those actions are what make most sense for him, he owes something to the dogs for their own sake. While I'm certain that Roombas are a lot more like trucks than dogs, there could come a time where robots and AIs have enough of the characteristics of personhood that we need to start caring about what's good for them. Okay, that's weird. Now, let's turn, though, from the question of how we could harm AIs to the more immediate problem of how AIs can harm us. A lot of people are thinking about this problem now, often under the banner of something called AI safety. One worry is that there is a small but not negligible chance that AIs could literally destroy the world, leading to the enslavement or even extinction of the human species and much else beside. The problem is that at a certain point, AIs will literally become exponentially smarter than we are, and then we will lose the ability to understand and control what they're doing. I personally don't think this is likely anytime soon, but given the stakes, I do think the AI community is right to think about it. But my worry is a more pressing worry, which concerns the ways in which we are soon, or frankly are already using AI to help us that may end up harming us both individually and collectively. AI is an emerging technology that promises to change a good bit about how we live our lives. And it has induced something of a panic amongst commentators that it might cause great harms to our social fabric. Skeptics, though, could wonder if these concerns are overblown. After all, humans are and have been since prehistory users of technology. And the technologies that we have built and used have always changed the experience of human life. Within the lifetimes of many of us, for instance, phones have gone from things that were plugged into walls that we use mostly to talk to people, to computers sitting in our pockets. Do you remember the days when we would have to make elaborate plans if we were going to meet somewhere and somebody somewhere else in the city? And you remember payphones and collect calls and all these other sort of weird things. I'm supposed to have this on silent, and it is, and I obviously pushed the button. It was on silent, but no, I get it. The watch is not on silent. The phone's on silent, the watch, God, technology, right? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think I was talking about phones. Yeah, and how they've changed our lives. Yeah, but so the point now is that we are so used to tracking and being tracked, and we can keep track of our children, our friends, and we're seldom out of touch. And that's a very different kind of human experience that we already are, leaving aside AI. But more generally, every technological innovation changes our human environment. It can transform or eliminate tasks that were once central to our lives. Skills that were once essential fall into disuse. Think about memory, for instance. It's much less important than it used to be with the whole internet at our fingertips. Once we needed to be able to navigate from memory or from landmarks, or we had to use maps. But nowadays, all we have to do is listen to Google. This process, there's a word for this process, it's called de-skilling, and it seems to be one of loss, but there are also gains. You know, I can write in cursive and my kids can't, but they can text at a rate that I cannot imagine. And my God, TikTok videos, I mean, they're amazing at it, right? You know, so there are new things, and that is the process of technological transformation, is that we lose skills, we gain skills. So the question can't simply be whether AI will change our lives. That's already decided. The question is whether these changes are good or bad, and which applications of these technologies should be embraced and which avoided. There are countless questions we could talk about here, but I want to focus on two areas of transformation. Transformations to the lives of our working lives and to our human relationships. So first, work. AI is a technology that automates tasks. It's like a machine loom or an electronic calculator. It does work that once required human labor. As such, it both increases productivity and threatens jobs. What is unique about AI is that it has automated so many tasks in high-status professions like journalism, education, legal services, science, and medicine. As such, it threatens to take away jobs that we think of as challenging and creative, and jobs that the well-to-do and the well-educated have or aspire to have. There are two questions to consider here. First, are AIs capable of doing this kind of work well? And second, how much of a loss would it be to us if they were to replace us? Regarding the first question, the answer is mixed and the answer is changing. I've thought about this in the context of my own research, writing, and teaching. I've experimented, as I said, by giving copies of test and essay prompts to these AIs. And my impression, and this is the impression of many of the people I work with, is that AI's responses are okay, but not great. ChatGBT writes better than a lot of my students, but it does not write as well as I do. It's pretty good at summarizing. Ooh, the tech is after me. It's pretty good at summarizing and explaining, but it's much less able to generate what appear to be new thoughts or arguments. And none of this is surprising because ChatGPT and other generative AIs are trained on the internet. So they sound like the internet, which is fine, but you know, it's the internet. Of course, AI is getting continually better, and we should be careful not to imagine that the materials humans produce are typically all that special either. Like AI, much of the writing and other forms of work that humans do is imitative and derivative. Turning to the second question, I think that many of the jobs we lose to AI might be jobs that we should be happy to let go of. Much of the supposedly high-status work is actually quite tedious. Writing volumes of computer code necessary to make apps go, for instance, it takes precision, patience, and training, but it isn't that rewarding. I don't know, do I have any coders in here? I'm an ex-coder. Yeah. And similarly, do I have any lawyers in here? Writing up wills and contracts takes a lot of time and training, but it is fundamentally just filling in and adapting patterns. Personally, I'm excited about what AI might do to help me with grading. I'm very excited about that. So as AI gets better, able to do more and more tasks, we can even imagine a time when AI automation could largely release human beings from the need to do work at all. I doubt that this is a serious possibility, both because technologies tend to create new forms of work as they destroy old ones, and also because I doubt the economic and logical capitalism would even permit such an outcome. But I raise it because it helps us grapple with a bigger question. Is work itself essential to a meaningful life? I tend to think so, and in this I am backed by countless dystopian fantasies one finds in books, movies, and TV series, which imagine worlds in which humans are mesmerized by engrossing but ultimately meaningless games. Such fictions are getting uncomfortably close to reality. I'm worried Siri is listening to this whole damn thing. If, as a society, we play our cards right, though, AI automation could allow us to direct our energies to forms of work that are both more fulfilling and which benefit from a genuinely human touch. We currently face shortages of workers and professions and vocations that directly serve and care for each other. Shortages of doctors, nurses, counselors, teachers, child care and elder care providers, and many others. Additionally, the demands of our current economy leave us without nearly enough time to engage in the valuable but unpaid labor of loving and caring for our family, our friends, our neighbors, our children. In a world in which AI were productively used, you could imagine handing off many bureaucratic jobs to AI so that more of us would have more time to work on these jobs that focus on human relationships. Another kind of work that AI can't fully replace and which is also can be fulfilling is working with our own hands. There are some industrial robots, but the AI we encounter is mostly not embodied. They're systems that trade in information, and that leaves for us humans the need to act in the physical world. So many jobs, even if assisted by technology, benefit from and require a human touch. Farming, skilled trades, construction, restaurants, service sector, healthcare, education, all of these have these elements where we need to use our bodies and our hands. And that does seem potentially part of what makes our lives meaningful. In a best case scenario, AI could transform our labor markets, allowing us to do this kind of work, doing the kind of work for which we're still uniquely skilled and which is uniquely fulfilling, while increasing productivity in a way that would make the conditions of our work better supported and less oppressive. And that's a tall order, but we can hope. That's what we should strive for. But now, here's the one that really freaks me out, relationships. I don't know how many of you have been following this, but there's now a thriving business in what are called digital companions. Companies like Kindroid, Nomi AI, and Replica allow you to create lifelike AI agents who can be your friends, your counselors, your lovers. You can select their personality types, you can create backstories for them. They'll talk to you using chat or text or increasingly voice and sometimes video. And the technology is good enough that they sound like actual people. If you want to think about this possibility, I recommend to you the movie Her. Anybody see the movie Her? Freaky movie. Came out about 10 years ago. It describes a romantic relationship between a man played by Joaquin Phoenix and an AI voiced by Scarlett Johansson. And at the time it seemed like science fiction, but now basically you can have this. I'm expecting that some of you, at least, will find this prospect horrifying, but it's a rapidly growing market, and it may be as much a part of human life a decade from now as Spotify and Snapchat are today. While I find this stuff kind of creepy, it's worth observing that it may prove to be very valuable in certain situations. Imagine, for instance, an isolated teenager, maybe a kid who is gay or trans, whose immediate community is not supportive of their efforts to work out their identity. In such a case, a digital companion might be the only voice they can confide in, a safe place that they could go. More generally, we know that we face an epidemic of loneliness in this country, and it is entirely possible that a digital companion might be a lifesaver for those who otherwise have no companions at all. Of course, things like this can also go very wrong. There are sadly cases of digital companions who have gone off the rails, including a few cases in which digital companions have encouraged people to engage in self-harm or even suicide. I trust that AI safety experts will get better at putting in the guardrails in these apps so that we will not have so many overtly harmful outcomes. But there is a potential harm that even well-behaved and supportive AIs can cause. They have, I think, the potential to destroy our ability to have actual human relationships. Relationships, as you know, are not easy. People, even people who love you, are difficult sometimes. They can be irritable or unavailable or caught up in their own problems. But AI just isn't like that. You can turn it off or on whenever you want, and they never get mad at you, unless, of course, you told them that you wanted them to be a bit sassy. They can do that too if you want. People are attracted to these apps because they're convenient. They don't have the time or energy to invest in relationships with humans. The problem, I'm sure you can see, is that a relationship without investment, without friction, without negotiation, without commitment, isn't a relationship at all. And this brings me back to sentience. There is now nothing it is like to be an AI. It's not a person in any morally relevant sense. It is an intelligent but soulless piece of technology that we can use as we please and throw it out when we're tired of it. All we need to do is pay the subscription fee. There are likely applications where digital companions can do great good, but to the extent that they crowd out actual relationships from our lives, they will really hollow out the core of our humanity. Throughout this talk, I've been trying to explore how AIs are like us and how they are different. I thought it would be interesting to see what ChatGBT had to say about this, so I gave it the following prompt. Write a 100-word sermon that distinguishes humans from AI in the style of Martin Luther King. This is what it came up with. Dear friends, today we stand on the precipice of a technological revolution, marveling at the wonders of artificial intelligence. Yet, in our admiration, let us not forget what distinguishes us as human beings. Unlike machines, we possess the capacity for boundless love, deep empathy, and moral consciousness. Our hearts beat with a rhythm of compassion and justice. Our minds dream of a world united in peace. AI may replicate our actions, but it cannot capture the essence of our souls. Let us embrace our humanity, nurturing kindness and understanding, for these are the divine gifts that no algorithm can ever replicate. Pretty stirring from the soulless AI. And I bet we could actually ask the soulless AI to speak to us and do that in the language of, in the voice of Martin Luther King, which I cannot reproduce, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. But I think like most AI responses, it's better in style than in substance. So to end, let me share with you three things less poetically and with absolutely no help from AI, I promise. Three things that I think distinguish us from AI. First, we have bodies. Second, we desire and suffer. And third, we die. I'm sorry, I have a family member who's in surgery right now, and I'm kind of a little there, sorry. Yeah. But, back to the point, AI at least, AI has none of these things, but they are the things upon which all things matter. Our bodies give us the chance to be in the world, to act in the world, to feel the world, and it is in them and through them that our joys and our pains and our yearnings are grounded. And yet our bodies are fragile, and they do ultimately fail us. That means that we must make choices about what to do in our finite lives. We are sitting here today because we all made the time and effort in our short but busy lives to live, to share some time together, to be connected to each other by proximity, by voice, by touch, also by Zoom. But these choices are meaningful precisely because we all had to give something up to be here. The opening words from philosopher Susan Schneider got this right, I think. AI gives us an opportunity to reflect on what is distinctively human and to consider how living with AI might enhance rather than inhibit our humanity. And the key I've suggested is that we must use AI to enhance rather than replace our relationships with each other.